So hello and welcome to our 14th edition of Impulse Talks, live from Paris. We are glad to have you with us today to talk about resilience in smart city. So as you are now starting to be aware, our ambition with Impulse Talk sessions is to provide an international overview of innovation and how tech is developing in construction, cities, industries, and beyond. Every 2 months, we are featuring some of the best startups, along with testimonies from corporate leaders and perspectives from venture capital investors, covering topics such as digital construction, Industry 4.0, and as it is the case today, smart city. So as a reminder, please turn off your microphones and cameras to make the session as smoothly as possible. And for your information, this session is being recorded. Microphones. Thank you. So before introducing our speakers for today, a few words about Impulse Partners. At Impulse, we are talking about innovation in construction, smart cities, and industry. We know these are some of the biggest sectors in the world, but they remain large because they are highly fragmented, ruled by local and productivity. We are convinced that there is a huge opportunity for innovation and entrepreneurs in those fields, and that they can help reshape the industry and improve efficiency and sustainability. Our role is to help detect the most promising startups and to connect them with the market. We act as a third party and a facilitator between industry players, startups, and investors. Focus sectors and more than 750 startups, which we have helped accelerate in their. Part of our job is to bring people together across the value chain and across geography. This is exactly why we will be doing. This is exactly what we will be doing today, and considering how diverse the audience is. There are around 50 participants that have registered for this session: cities, corporate leaders in materials, engineering firms, contractors, real estate, and venture capital firms. We are glad to gather people from all over the world on such an interesting topic. So I will now let my colleague Alice take.
Yes, thank you very much, Karina. So a few words about our goals today. So we are going to talk about innovation in smart city and more precisely about resilience in urban development. So talking about a smart city, we have qualified smart cities for 5 axes: sustainability, mobility, resilience, citizens inclusion, frugality. And so on each of these dimensions, if you go on, thank you, Salma. Yes, on each of those dimensions, there are different kind of innovation and tech that can impact our cities. And our idea is to help startups to develop and test their impact through and in collaboration with the public sectors, corporates, and citizens, because each of these players have a role to play in the urban development. So at Impulse Partner, we are convinced that all the players in the value chain can be impacted by what is happening in smart cities innovation. And so all of these actors have the responsibility to evaluate the potential of those innovations and to collaborate to develop them. So thank you, Karina. I let you the stage again in order to go further.
Thank you. So coming up today, we'll hear first from Juan, the head of sustainability at JLL Spain. Then we'll hear from Nicole from 2150, a fund based in Copenhagen, London, and Berlin, dedicated to startups that develop technologies to optimize the urban environment. And we will also hear presentations from 4 entrepreneurs who come from Canada, Belgium, Italy, and Germany. And to conclude, we will have a few minutes at the end of the session for questions and answers. And please use the chat to type your questions or activate your microphone. Without further ado, let's start the 14th edition of Impulse Talks dedicated to Smart City. So I'm now glad to welcome Juan from JLL Spain. If you have any questions, ask them in the chat or activate your microphone at the end of the section. Thank you. So Juan.
Hi, good afternoon to all, and thank you very much, Karina. Thank you to Impulse Partner for inviting me. I think it's very exciting to be part of these collaboration forums, because I'm convinced that climate change is such a huge challenge that it really needs that all the agents are working together in one way or the other and knowledge exchange. So thank you very much. If we could start with the first slides. Okay, thank you very much. So as was told in the introduction, I'm currently heading the Sustainability and ESG a strategic consultancy in JLL Spain. So we have a big focus on smart cities, and our approach is that the smart city necessarily needs to be sustainable and needs to be low carbon. As we are seeing here, most of the goals are impulsed by the European Union, but really they are cascaded downwards to the other agents of the real estate sector. So it's quite important that there is a certain coordination, not only between the administrations, the European Union, the member states, the regions, the municipalities, but also that the private sector is doing its part. Because if you think of it, a large part of any city is really developed, it's built, it's occupied, and it's operated by the private agents. So really, I think it's necessary that there's a common framework to work with. And if we move to the next slide, please. There should be a kind of language, which I think in terms of sustainability can be ESG, the environmental, the social, and the governance aspects that we all kind of use, so that there's a common understanding, and also that the startups can collaborate with the corporations much better. And I think here the key point is really that what is going to move all the businesses towards ESG, having ESG in their core strategies and acting in this environmentally responsible way. It's not only social responsibility, it's not only a conscience of climate change, but also there's a tangible value. And this is where we are working at JLL, helping visualize much better. And what are the keystones of our strategy? First of all, communication, that we can communicate the challenges, the successes much better to all stakeholders, and also data and technology. This is what will give any action credibility, will make it transparent, and will be able to obtain financing, which is key for startups and for SMEs and for everybody really. So I think that creating social value and economic value is something that is possible, but if we work within this kind of framework. Next slide, please. So as sometimes we were finding several issues, not only within our clients, but partners, administrations, that there's not a common, let's say, map for ESG. We decided to create our own. So we divided it into 3 basic levels. A more strategic level, which would be at the city scale, where we would have the urban master plans. We would have, for example, the 15-minute city plan by the Paris municipality and others. And then there would be an intermediate level, which would be at the district scale, where it's much easier to interact with the local community. This public participation can be enacted in a very much more efficient way. The citizens' voices can be heard, the associations, and more specific plans can be developed and implemented. Also, the building level is quite important, because in the end, all the projects have really to be planned, they have to be designed, they have to be constructed at a smaller scale, but within this large framework. So we believe that the top-down strategy is valid, but only if it's complemented with a bottom-up. So both of them are necessary. And what is the backbone of this way of thinking, of this philosophy? It's the KPIs, as you're seeing at the left of the slide. Data, being able to measure, to set goals, and to really monitor that they are being achieved. If not, there can be other actions intended to correct or mitigate or achieve them in the future. So if there's not a data collection and a monitoring, this will not be successful from our point of view. So next slide, please. So really, if we zoom in into each one of these levels, they really have to be intertwined together. So the city level is very important, having a kind of a city vision, a powerful city vision, which is driven by the citizens and then established by the politicians generally, but also the districts, they have to be coordinated in a way, and each individual project at the building level, and here is where the private sector has its say, has also to be coordinated, because if the buildings are not integrated into these smart networks or smart grids, they will not be able to function, but the other way around, if the buildings are not achieving the operational efficiency, we will not be able to reach the low carbon city, which is not only a goal, but this is an obligation for 2050. Hopefully we will be able to reach it earlier, and this is where most of the corporations are working towards. So next slide, please. And here I've brought 3 examples, one of each level, so we can really visualize how these kinds of projects are really developed and implemented. As you know, our sector or our purpose is the real estate consultancy with a big focus on technology, and right now our strategy is built around sustainability in all areas. We are also walking the talk, as we like to say, so we will be in net zero carbon in 2030. Not only our own offices, but also all the properties that we manage in the benefit of our clients. So this is the biggest challenge, and this is why we are working very intensely in the last months, because as you know, we have clients from many different sectors, from retail to offices to residential properties, even data centers. And in this project, I think it's quite interesting because it blends this mix of uses, all these sectors that I have mentioned, and it aims to be a new city center in one of the metropolises of the world, which is London, of course. And the challenges, which are quite important to take into account, because of course, when we come to these kind of webinars, many corporations, we speak about our achievements, our success, but really there's still a lot of challenges out there. And I think it's to create new districts that are not gentrified, that are inclusive, that spread prosperity throughout the city. So I think having a polycentric concept is quite important, because this will be this will allow the different areas and the different layers of the citizenship and of the economy to benefit from these investments. So this is one of our main goals in this project. And of course, the real estate products are strategized or designed in this way that they are inclusive, and they have built in different uses. Not anymore like a corporate tower, which is exclusively office space for the large corporations. Next slide, please. As we move to the district level, I would like to emphasize green open space as a structuring element. It's not only an aesthetical component of the city, but it's really a green infrastructure which will benefit the citizens' health. It will capture emissions, so it has a very powerful role within the low carbon city, because vegetation is the only element that throughout its whole life cycle is capturing CO2 in a very efficient way. And in this case, it's a project in the Middle East. I think they are taking very large steps to increase the smartness and sustainability of their cities. And in Europe, sometimes we are very focused on our own, we are very Eurocentric, and it's interesting to open up, let's say, our vision and include some elements of other geographies. And then the next project in the following slide, to change completely directions. This is a project in the city of Madrid, where our own team here in Spain has worked in the past years, and this is working on the urban voids. So there's a very interesting concept, which I think it's the interior peripheries, the parking lots, the voids, the plots of land that have not been built, abandoned areas. This is in the corner of the most expensive central business district in Madrid, and it has been undeveloped for many years, and we were working to extract the maximum value, but not only the real estate value, the financial value, but also the social value. And I think here it has a very interesting sustainability component, because there's one of the main transportation hubs of the city of Madrid below this plot. So we are building on top of a train station, light rail, metro, with a lot of bus stops. And attracting all this activity here will help reduce the carbon footprint of the city, because it will allow not building new office campuses in the periphery where mostly employees travel by car. So it has this, let's say, strategic planning component, but also the real estate product itself. We have worked on the brief with the client, which is one of the major retailers of the city of Madrid. And then we have prepared and managed an international architecture competition where we advised our client to work with some of the most progressive architects. And if you move to the next slide, I will show you the outcome of the competition. I think it's a very beautiful project, which was presented by Heatherwick Studio from London. So it's beautiful in the sense, not only architecturally, as you can see, it has some kind of organic soft surfaces with curved lines. It's a very human-centric project with nature at the core. And there's also a green rooftop where there will be a kind of a running or jogging and sports practicing area for the employees. The ground floor is very permeable for all the citizens to be able to enter, have a view, and then there will be a lot of collaborative spaces. So I think this is a nice case of collaboration between the investor, which is the retail company, the consultants, which were us, the designers, the architects, the engineers. In the future, I think that the occupiers, they will benefit and they will also operate in a sustainable way. And then as time is of the essence, if we move to the next slide, please, thank you. Take into account that there are still many gaps in our approach. I mean, in general, of course, JLL and many other companies in the administration. So the focus is currently on carbon positive development. Low carbon or zero carbon is not enough. We need to create buildings that produce more energy than they consume, but this cannot be separated from the other components of sustainability. So we are moving from a pyramid scheme or a triangle to a kind of wheel, which is what we propose, because all of these challenges, they are really linked together. So there can be no zero carbon if there is no social equality, if there is no health and well-being for the workers, the employees in the buildings, if biodiversity is not really improved, and of course all these other areas that you can see, like arts and culture too. So thank you very much for your attention, and looking forward to answering the questions from the audience.
Thanks a lot, Juan, for your presentation. Now I'm glad to welcome Nicole. Sorry. Are there any questions? Does anyone have any questions for Juan? We can always take the questions in the end. Okay, so I'm now glad to welcome Nicole, who will present 2150.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for taking the time. Looking forward to the discussion. So if you can go to the next slide, first slide, or I guess the second slide, that's just the intro. So I am a partner with 2150, and we're a venture fund based in Europe with a global investment mandate, and we're looking at sustainable cities. And I've been in VC for a number of years, and prior to joining 2150, led venture capital and partnerships for the Google Sidewalk Labs project. So, for the last part of my career, have really been focused on cities. And, as Juan was outlining, it's not just sustainability, there's also, the full ESG element of, how we're really tackling, kind of livable, healthy, sustainable cities, and really making them, wonderful places to live so that we can all, prosper. And so 2150 is focused on it from the technology side. One of the core things I'm doing is building out our investor platform. So we have a number of investors in our fund who are looking to deploy these in the properties that they're either building or managing. And so we're really working closely, with the customer, the end customer on the market, in addition to the cutting edge technologies. And so today I want to talk a little bit about resilience in cities. And so this is from the Resilient Cities Network, and there's amazing, content on there, so you can take a look. I copy and pasted this directly from there. But just to make sure that we're all on the same page, talking about urban resilience, it's the ability of a city to survive, adapt, and grow with both chronic and acute stresses, so short-term and long-term stresses. And it can be weather, which is what people are really talking about now, economic, COVID's kind of, displayed a little bit of that, cultural or political in nature as well. And so how do we really, put people first? So think about place-based, integrated, inclusive, risk-aware, forward-looking, long-term planning with regards to cities and, how we tackle, any changes, anything that we need to do to really, help cities achieve this level of urban resilience. Go to the next slide. And so if we jump to the next slide, it just elaborates on urban resilience a little further.
Yeah, sorry, there's a bit of a lag in the system.
Okay, that's fine. This one's good. So really want to define, what urban tech is, because it's very broad. And you can go to our website. There's a blog post that we did, and some of the data from that is further along in the slide. And when we think about urban technology, it's really about technology that makes cities, better places to live, more resilient. This can be anything from, the typical heating and cooling and building automation to, air purification, being able to have a healthy lifestyle. And one of the distinctions I do want to make when regards to urban tech and smart cities is, when I was at Sidewalk, because it's also associated with Google, one of the things that we purposely never said is the actual word smart city. So we talked about inclusive development, inclusive cities, because cities are more than just data. And smart cities implies data. And, it's not necessarily a bad thing per se, but it's broader than that. And with urban technology, a lot of people just think GovTech, and you're going to sell technologies that the municipality will be a customer of and pay for, and that is great. And cities are adopting a lot of those technologies, and I think that Impulse has highlighted a number of really great technologies doing those types of things and companies doing those things, and that's a component. From a venture perspective, we look much broader than that, and also think about people that are selling to real estate developers, like a lot of the investors in our fund, and really trying to understand how you can build scalable, repeatable business models in cities, and working with a number of different players within the city ecosystem. So you can read more about that in the blog post that we put together if you're curious about that. Go to the next slide. And so just to provide a little bit of background, I think a lot of you already know this, where, we're already, more of us are moving to cities. By 2050, I think, well over 2/3 of people will live in cities. Air quality is declining in a lot of cities. GHG is mainly coming now from cities, and heat in particular. The global south is experiencing significant increases in temperature that is really forcing the need for different technologies. People are going to need air conditioning in the global south to live, not just to be comfortable and be able to work from home. And so cities are becoming more and more the battleground for the future of climate change, and where we're either going to win or lose this battle. There's one more slide as part of this background. So you can look at some of the data behind this, and what's really exciting is there are a number of technologies that, more and more technologies are trying to address problems in cities. More and more investment is going into these technologies. So, hardware used to be hard. VCs didn't like to invest in hardware because, they just didn't think it had a scalable business model. And that's really changing, because we actually see the value. The infrastructure is catching up, and there's more and more true problems that hardware can solve. And so the thing about resilient cities is cities are now able to adopt a lot of these technologies because the costs are coming down, because more people are adopting the solutions. More smart people are building solutions in this area. Not only venture capitalists, but a lot of corporates. JLL, has a venture studio and a venture, works with a lot of startups. There's a number of, large organizations that are now getting into the game, and it's really just making, everything accelerate. And it's just so positive to see. Materials and infrastructure is an area that we never used to see, a lot of investment in. It was just very traditional industries and, incremental innovation, just little baby step by little baby step. But, a tech unicorn is something that has, a $1 billion valuation. And, I have a slide later. We talk about gigacorns. So it's a tech unicorn that can mitigate a gigaton of CO2. But 75 of the tech unicorns out there are in this space. And it's not just mobility. Over the last year, 6 of those were in concrete, cement, and waste. And so it's really exciting to see more and more momentum in this industry. And high emission sectors are underfunded, but more and more capital is flowing into it. So concrete is an example. In 2016, had, I think, maybe 30 million euros put into the industry. Now it was 166. So it was a huge growth in the amount of dollars going in to support these sectors. So these are no longer niche plays. You know, urban tech to make cities more resilient are now becoming mainstream. Jump to the next slide. Talking about resiliency, you can actually see that it's getting more expensive. You know, like the cost of climate is actually a real cost now. And that's one of the things that's also driving the investments in this sector, is that it's just getting more and more expensive to be able to, you know, fix a lot of the issues that are arising. When you had a flood, you know, once every 20 years, it wasn't worthwhile to invest in flood technology. Now you're having them twice a year in your country, and they're devastating, and the magnitude of the damage is much higher. So this is US data, but you can basically see, you know, what it's trying to represent, the growth. Go to the next slide. How we're thinking about, you know, being able to divide technology is we think about this in the urban stack. And so you have 4 layers of a city, and they're all interconnected. And COVID has shown that has been even more true, how interconnected and fragile some of these layers are. And so we think about the first layer, which is enable. So this is infrastructure, whether it's digital infrastructure or physical infrastructure. This is the base from which you can really ensure that you have a resilient city, that you have the flexibility to apply new technologies, that as new things emerge, or new, you know, weather events, or, you know, issues that are chronic or acute are starting to affect your city, that you can actually have the very solid base from which to find the best solutions. And so this would be, you know, anything to do with, you know, infrastructure around roads and buildings, you know, distributed, digital infrastructure networks, all of those types of things. Then you go up a layer and you think about build. So now that we have the solid base, how are we building on these in this city? So how are we building buildings? What materials are we using? How sustainable are they? What are the processes? How are we optimizing productivity? How are we reducing waste in all of these processes? So that's another important layer. Then we have property managers who are operating a lot of the assets that are within a city, whether it's a building or whether it's, an automotive fleet, whatever it is, how are we operating these to, be efficient, to not have congestion, to make sure that we're optimizing resources, and that everything is connected in some way so that we can really take advantage of efficiencies. And lastly, what is the experience? So, you and I walking around, whether it's our neighborhood, whether it's where we work, whether we're a tourist, how can we make sure that citizens, have this, safe, healthy place to really be the best version of themselves? And so this is how we think about technology in the urban stack, and making sure we understand where the technology fits in the urban stack and how it actually is connected to the rest of the layers in the urban stack. So go to the next slide. We can just quickly skip through this, and I don't know if you can share the information afterwards, but this is just to basically, put some very specific categories up and down, the different layers, so you can start to see what we mean when we talk about the different technologies that we're looking for. And so we can go to the next one. This is some of the data that came with our collaboration with dealroom.co around the data behind, what's going into the urban sector and really helping make cities more resilient. And so you can see generally across, all urban tech startups, that it's definitely grown, over time, over the last 5 years. And this was done in the fall, so it's slightly 1 quarter behind, but 4.4x the amount of investment that was going into the sector 5 years ago. I think let's get to the next one, which is also really important for some of the people and organizations represented on this call, is that corporates are getting into this space, and that's a huge, huge boon. So I'm from Canada, and compared to, the friendly neighbor to the south, American corporates have been getting into this business for years across not only urban tech, but just any type of innovation and technology. And the rate and the pace of innovation that happens because of that is significantly higher than in Canada, where the corporates tend to be a bit more traditional. They take a bit longer. Their balance sheets aren't as big. And so to see this level of corporate engagement in the innovation sector is only going to continue to just amplify the amount of innovation that's happening in the urban tech sector. So we go to the next one. As a VC, these are the things that we think about. And so if you're a startup or even if you're a customer, these are the things that we're looking at from the investment perspective when we're making that decision. So if you're looking at a technology, the first thing you need to think about is, does it help make me more money? Can it give me another revenue stream? Or can it help decrease costs? So both of those affect the bottom line. These other two are a little bit more qualitative, but there's so many data points out there within the smart city, IoT, sensor network. It's impossible for anybody, no matter how good at Excel you are. There's no amount of pivot table and VLOOKUP formula that can really help you optimize all of that data. And so a lot of solutions are really helping people take the data and turn it into information. And lastly, is just even improving your brand. So because you're seen as a proactive leader in the space, you're the early adopter, how can, adopting that technology really help be the trailblazer that helps you actually gain revenue or decrease costs because of, maybe upcoming regulation or something along those lines. So this is what we think is really important to the adoption of urban technology, within the market. And, a couple of the other considerations that we think about to, that speak of the success of a company are public versus private customers. So the public procurement process is very different from the private one, and there's nothing wrong with one or the other. You just need to make sure that each company understands the parameters under which they're operating. Is there any regulatory element to this? Can somebody be a leader and really help bring people along to help them make sure that they're dealing with regulation ahead of time? Or is there something that's kind of coming down the pipe and that can actually really drive adoption more quickly? Barriers to entry, is it a technical barrier so that it's going to actually take somebody years to catch up? Or is it just more contractual where somebody's actually signed up with you? Facebook's probably not the best social media platform compared to maybe some other platforms, but you're not going to switch, which is why they've kind of been able to get their to get their success, because it's just like the switching costs are just not worth the trouble. And what's the problem? So I think that's the number one thing, is there are amazing technologies out there that need to exist, but they're not a company, because the problem is big and it's not big enough for somebody to want to pay for, or it's just too small of a niche, or it's just too complicated to figure out what the actual business model is. So I think that's also really important, is always make sure you focus on what problem's being solved. We go to the next slide. Sustainability is something that's getting more and more momentum. And at 2150, it's just table stakes. And in a lot of the groups that we're working with on the real estate side, it's just becoming something that has to be integrated into everything they do. I'm not going to read all of this, but I think that the takeaway from this is that more and more technology companies need to understand the impact frameworks in which they're maybe going to be subject to now or in the future with regards to regulatory. What are their customers going to also have to be, what frameworks are they going to have to follow? And, how can, us as a fund help our portfolio be proactive so that they can help any clients they have in the urban environment be early adopters and really make sure that they're ahead of the curve to really help ensure our cities are resilient. Go to the next slide. This talks about our gigacorns. So I was a little tongue in cheek, when I talk about that, but really thinking about, of the annual emissions globally we have, net emissions, how can technology companies help mitigate that? And as a venture fund, we hope to be able to invest in, 15 to 20 companies that will be mitigating a gigaton of CO2, over the next 15 years. And if they do that, and we invest in those companies, us alone can mitigate 80% of the world's CO2 emissions. A very, very lofty goal. I highly doubt we're going to achieve it, but we have to shoot for that. And I think, if there's other groups that are doing the same thing, and we can actually help make sure that our cities are the ones that are really moving the needle when it comes to addressing climate change. And if you go to the next slide. There's 4 areas I just want to close with. Really thinking about resilient cities. There's more than this, but these are some of the things that I'm either thinking about now or I have in the past. So go to the next slide. The first is sustainable technologies, which I've been talking about. Everybody's going to have to figure out what their 2050 plan is. What are the regulatory environments they have to work in? Right now, a lot of people believe that there's a green premium associated, with a lot of sustainable technologies. It's actually coming down because more and more companies, more and more cities, more and more groups are adopting these companies, and through scale, that green premium is coming down. We're investing in a lot of companies that are actually cheaper than the current market alternative. Market demand, a lot of customers, I've come from Europe, or I've come from Canada to Europe, North America to Europe, and Europe is by far way ahead when it comes to market demand. The average citizen is educated and they know what they want. And then making sure that functionality that IoT and the data sets provide can actually then, help scale a lot, give you the data you need to be able to properly measure and manage, sustainability items. The next one on the list is inclusive design. And so this is getting back to people first and really thinking about designing with the people, not for the people, being really close to your customer, thinking about physical, digital, and even just general, accessibility, and really making sure that all types of diverse people can excel and prosper in a city. And this really helps ensure that we really reduce a lot of the cultural and political elements that can really, affect a city's resilience. There's a great podcast on 99% Invisible for anybody you listen about curb cuts. So make sure you check that out and you can understand how making, a technology innovation for one group can actually affect a much larger group. And they talked about making curb cuts for, people with physical disabilities, but then that it helped, people pushing carriages, people dragging luggage, people moving things. It's now going to help robots and, autonomous robots that are delivering things. So something that appeared to be quite niche for a very small group actually had a much wider appeal and, has really helped cities more broadly. Go to the next slide, which I believe is data and privacy. And so as we're talking about this is, Europe's definitely a lot more tight on this, but it's really important to make sure that there's responsible data use, open standards, transparency, governance. Data is not an issue as long as we have all of these things in place. And one of my former colleagues at Sidewalk has spun out something that to make an open source standard that they just want people to take advantage of. It's called Digital Transparency in the Public Realm. It's an open source standard to really help people feel confident in the data that's being collected about them as they go about a city. So that actually takes the fear factor down. So if you're walking around and you see something that looks like a camera, you just hold your phone up, you do you scan the QR code, and it tells you, who's been using, who's collecting the data, what it's being used for, what format it's in, how long it's being, held for. Are they taking a picture of you? Is it just seeing a gray blob walk by, counting people? And that really just helps people better understand, what's going on in the city. So definitely check that out. And then the last one, if you want to go to the last one, is community engagement. This is so important. I've done a lot of community engagement, as part of the tech sector over the years, because in theory, a lot of us are very progressive and we live in a bit of a bubble. And it's just, you need to walk down the street and talk to strangers and really find out what's going on. You need to hold design thinking events. You really need to understand who the customers are and get their perspective. And you really need to listen. You really need to talk to them because you want to listen. It helps with buy-in. For any development or technology you might want to deploy in a neighborhood. It helps with politics. If the politicians know this is what their constituency wants and this is what people have been engaged about, it really just helps eliminate a bunch of hurdles. And it might terrify some people, but talking to random people is actually kind of fun, and you never know what's going to happen or what you're going to actually gain from that. So it's really important to do as part of any technology deployment or real estate development. And then if we move on to the last slide. That's it. So happy to answer any questions, or you can send me a note, Nicole at 2150.bc. More than happy to talk about this because this is what I live day in, day out.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Does anyone have any questions at this time? Okay, I'm assuming we're good. So next, we're going to phase into our next portion of talks where the startups will present their cases. So first we'll hear from Pierre, who will present OClair Environment. And if we can keep for the startups around 5 minutes, the presentations to around 5 minutes, so we can conclude with questions and answers at 4 p.m. So Pierre, if you want to begin your presentation.
Yes. Thank you. First slide, please. First of all, I'm sorry, I didn't understand that this meeting was going to be in English. Then my slides are in French, but the website are bilingual, then you can have access both in French and English. Then I will do the presentation in French because I was not prepared for that. Then the OClair Environment is making deux types de produits, deux plateformes web, Neri, qui est une plateforme pour la gestion des systèmes septiques de résidences isolées autonomes, c'est-à-dire des résidences qui ne sont pas branchées à des égouts de municipalité. Et CETO, qui est une plateforme épidémiologique pour le suivi de contaminants microbiologiques et physico-chimiques dans les eaux usées, principalement le projet COVID-19 dans les grandes villes là, pour le suivi du matériel génétique de la COVID et la prévention des éclosions. Suivante. Alors, Neri municipal est une forme de Neri qui s'adresse particulièrement aux municipalités. Alors, ça permet la surveillance de l'ensemble de la filière septique, que ce soit la fosse septique, les systèmes secondaires ou tertiaires, peu importe la technologie utilisée. Et il y a une version mobile aussi qui est téléchargeable sur Apple Store et Google Play. Suivante. Alors, Neri, OClair Environnement a commencé en 2016 par la création de Neri. En 2018, on a déployé la deuxième version avec les coordonnées GPS. En 2019, la troisième version avec le Neri mobile, alors téléchargeable sur les tablettes téléphones. En 2021, nous avons appliqué le Neri fabricant avec les réglementations provinciales, donc qu'elles soient du Québec ou d'ailleurs, les réglementations peuvent être intégrées dans la plateforme. Notre espace client actuel consiste en 1160 municipalités au Québec, 1200 inspecteurs municipaux, 2400 systèmes de type secondaire et tertiaire. Suivante, s'il vous plaît. Alors, suivante, on voit en haut à droite le bouton connexion. Alors, ce que ça permet de faire, la plateforme Neri, oui, c'était bon, on peut aller à la suivante. Alors, ce que ça nous permet de faire, c'est de faciliter les communications en regroupant sur une même plateforme toutes les informations qui sont attachées à un système septique. Et puis par la suite, en centralisant ces informations-là, on peut les partager entre les différents intervenants, soit les fabricants, les citoyens, les inspecteurs municipaux, et ce, en temps réel. Ce que ça fait, c'est que ça optimise les stratégies d'action pour les systèmes hors normes et de cette façon-là, on protège les sources d'eau potable de ces résidences isolées-là. Suivante. La plateforme permet aussi la gestion des contrats d'entretien, d'inspection et aussi important, les réparations. Souvent, les systèmes contaminants ont des réparations. Suivante. Alors, il y a un module de communication aussi qui est intégré dans la plateforme Neri pour communiquer en bulk ou de façon individuelle avec les citoyens et les inspecteurs municipaux. Suivante. Alors, pour le citoyen qui est au centre de notre démarche, plus de 89% des propriétaires ont apprécié avoir accès à leurs données en tout temps. Alors, vraiment, ils sont au centre des préoccupations. Ils sont informés de tout ajout ou changement à leur dossier. Ils sont avisés des dates de visite et de vidange des systèmes septiques et ils ont accès à leur rapport d'analyse d'eau usée et d'eau potable. Suivante. Alors, Neri en chiffres, c'est 87% des citoyens qui sont rejoints par courriel. 86% des citoyens qui activent leur contrat d'entretien en ligne et 96% des inspecteurs municipaux qui utilisent Neri disent que ça leur simplifie la vie. Suivante. Alors ici, on a un exemple d'un dossier environnemental pour une résidence isolée autonome. On l'appelle Doria et on a le positionnement par Google Maps avec les coordonnées GPS. L'adresse où le système est basé et l'adresse de facturation qui peut être différente dans le cas des chalets, entre autres, et le nom de l'inspecteur municipal. Suivante. Alors, pour qu'une municipalité soit opérationnelle, ça prend environ une semaine. On lui transmet un chiffrier Excel préformaté et par la suite, on a un mécanisme de drag and drop qui nous permet d'effectuer la migration des données en environ une couple d'heures. Suivante. Alors, les avantages d'un SaaS, on les connaît, c'est notre formule, pas d'installation sur les serveurs, pas d'achat de logiciels, aucune limite d'utilisateurs, les sauvegardes sont automatiques, l'ajout de nouveaux modules est simple et rapide à faire. Suivante. Neri, c'est un de nos produits. Maintenant, CETO, c'est une plateforme épidémiologique. En cliquant sur les liens, vous pourrez avoir accès à une présentation d'environ 4 minutes qui va vous décrire la plateforme. Suivante.
Pierre, merci beaucoup. Thank you so much for presentation. I'm so sorry I have to interrupt you. Sorry for those who do not speak French. There was a misunderstanding. We'll of course send you the presentation slides in English. Do not worry about that. And thank you, Pierre. I'll let you conclude, if possible, in English, please.
Yes, the last one was the CETO for to follow the COVID-19 in the major city. Then this is a project with University McGill, Montreal, and Laval, and that has proven its efficacy to give an alarm system to prevent when explosions are coming in a specific sector. Then that's I have completed my presentation with this. Then do not hesitate to go on the website, or they are both in French and English. Thank you.
Thank you, Pierre. Thank you for this presentation of OClair Environment. We'll send the English presentation to our participants. I'll introduce and just give the floor to Ingrid for the presentation of Shayp. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Ingrid, so I'm the Sustainability Manager at Shayp, and our goal is to reduce water consumption in buildings by 22%. And this we do thanks to water monitoring and real detection leaks, so in real time. We can pass the slide. We developed, passez la slide. Do you hear me? Okay. We developed an innovative and non-invasive solution that monitors water consumption in buildings, as I said, and detects leaks in real time. So far, we saved more than 1 billion liters of water, so since our launch in 2017. We are modeled in the circular economy and labeled by different certifications such as Solar Impulse Foundation, and we are B Corp certified. We can go to the next slide. So myself, I joined Shayp as a communication manager, and after years I got more and more involved in sustainability and in impact. So my goal is to improve the positive impact of our company on the environment. Yes, we save water in buildings, but not only. We are also avoiding to emit carbon in the atmosphere. We can go to the next slide. Why do we do that, and how are we good at it? So passing the slide, please. I hope it's not news for you today, but water shortages are becoming more and more frequent. You can pass the slide, please. And this is due to climate change, population growth, and pollution. No, I think you got too far. So the climate change, population growth, and pollution are just impacting the water shortages in the several environments we are living. And water shortages are just increasing. So governments are now looking for solutions to help them to save the resources, but it's not easy to find a solution that is reliable, scalable, and that assess leakages in buildings. So if we pass the slide, please. Main cause of leaks are the type and the size of the buildings, the age of the plumbing system, the occupation rate, the frequency and the growth of the maintenance team. If there are a small maintenance team in buildings, of course, it's more difficult to assess and to monitor the water consumption. But there are also other effects that can have an impact in the buildings. At Shayp, we address the building sector, and we can go to the next slide, because it's identified by the European Union as playing a major role in addressing the water shortage. Indeed, 70% of the drinking water is used in the building sector. So here you can see several types of clients that we address. And regardless of the size of the building, we only use the water meter as the unique measuring point. So if there is a water meter in the buildings, we can help you to monitor your water consumption. And easily, any type of building can be equipped quickly and in a few days. As an example, we just equipped the port, so the harbor of Brussels, the Port de Bruxelles, which has a lot of facilities, and it took us 10 working days to equip more than 50 water meters. So this is how quick installation can be done and how quick water can be saved. But we are also working in different sectors as the hospitals, so the care system, university. We have Lidl as a big client. We have the main train road and so on. And we are also partnering up with water companies because they are playing a major role in assessing leaks by their customers, so by the citizens, but also towards all the companies. If we go further in the slide set, so we can go to voila, thank you. As I said, the building sector was identified. Now we created the solution, and it all started with the city of Brussels. So our CEO was energy manager of the city of Brussels, and he was asked to check out a building where there was a kindergarten. And all the children and the caring people were systematically falling sick because the building was sick. It was presenting the building sick syndrome. It means that the whole structure was infected with bacteria and so on. And the main cause, after a few researches, was that in the basement, but really far away in the basement, there was a leak that nobody detected. And it was there for years and years, maybe 20 years already. Nobody questioned the consumption, and nobody questions the bill. And after this, he just got mad because he said, how can it be possible that nobody is taking care of the buildings and nobody is checking the water bill? So he developed Shayp. He started like this, and the city of Brussels became one of our first clients. On a water bill of more than 1 million euro per year, 400,000 euro could be allocated to leaks. So 40% of the consumption of the city of Brussels were just water leaks in buildings, in fountains, on the football stadium also. So if you go to the next slide, please. They didn't see anything of this because they were they tracked the water consumption through the annual bill. So they were, as a lot of cities, waiting to have the annual bill coming up and then see how much the consumption was. And this was just It's just an example of how many cities and building maintenance teams are just use this manual method to monitor their consumption and their water bills. And it's just like this, because they don't have access to a platform as we propose now to monitor this in real time for them. So it was very difficult for the energy department, if not impossible, to detect leaks in a really easy way. They were just using the manual method as everyone. And so thousands of liters of water were just wasted every year. Even the famous mannequin piss, if you've already been to Brussels, so it's a famous fountain there, he was losing 1,000 liters, 1,000 liters per day, just because it was an open circuit. After detecting this, he became our symbol, and now all the water is just continuously used, and there is no waste anymore. So if we go to the next slide, we helped the maintenance team of the city of Brussels to install a control station, so a big screen in the offices, so they can see in real time which buildings are leaking. So here on this slide, you see a graph of our data logger. So we installed this small data logger, the small black box on the existing water meter. So we don't need to have access to electricity or Wi-Fi, because he's working on a 10 years battery. So it's non-invasive, super easy to install. And the connectivity is assured by Shayp. So it's also a way to say that it's super easy and it's an easy and scalable installation. As I said, in 10 working days, we can install more than 50 water meters. And there is no plumbing required. As competitors do, they are changing the plumbing, and this makes the installation cost very high. We don't touch the plumbing. If we go to the next slide, all the information collected by our data logger is then sent to an open API platform. So it's a SaaS model, as OClair just explained before, and it prioritizes the buildings. So how much water they are consuming, they're on the top of the platform, and then it goes like this. So the maintenance team has a clear view on which buildings are leaking, where the repairs needs to be done, how much water is wasted, but also how much money they are losing, waiting day after day. For the city of Brussels, I'm finishing. We made, you can go to the next slide. So as I said, we just used the...
Could you try to wrap it up a little bit, try to conclude, because we still have...
as I just said, I'm finishing up. So we saved for the city of Brussels only more than 250,000 euro per year, because we detect leaks in time and we work hand in hand with the maintenance team. And as you see, we also work with other cities in Brussels. So they joined this adventure, and we are also present in France, UK, Germany, and the Netherlands. You can go to the next slide. As said, we also partner up with a lot of water companies, and this is a fun fact, an event I was several months ago, where the guy that just took some scratch, he just said, okay, just work with Shayp, because thanks to them, the mannequin piece is now peeing water, but always the same water and not new water. So for the last slide, you can go to it. As I said, we saved, and we are very proud to have saved more than 1 billion liters of water so far. This is the equivalent of 400 Olympic pools. So just you imagine how big it is. And it's also more than 170 kilotons of carbon emission that we avoided, because when you ask for more water, when you let the leaks go on, you are also emitting a lot of carbon. And this is the end of my presentation. My email and contact details are on the last slide. Thank you for your attention, and I will stay quite a bit longer just for your questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ingrid. So I think we have a question from Gordon He asks, in the UK, 33% of distributed water is lost through leaks in water companies' pipe networks. Can Shayp help on the scale?
Yes, so we are trying to connect now with water companies. You just need to understand that we are working for the moment as Shayp, as our solution, after the water meter. So you have the metering that is took on the network, and I think you are speaking about numbers on the network of the water company. So all the water that is just taken from one water tank to the beginning of the buildings, and we are acting after the water meters, so within the buildings. But as said, we are now partnering up with water company to help them to detect leaks on the network, to detect leaks also in their water tanks. And yeah, you're totally right. So if you have any suggestions of who we should contact, or if you have you want to go further in this discussion, just ping me an email and I will be happy to discuss this further.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Now we'll move to Nicholas, who will present Thermosphr. Sorry, yeah, there we go. Nicholas, you can take the floor.
Hi everyone, thank you for welcoming me, and I'll try to keep it short so that everybody can go back to their normal activities. So I'm Nicolas, CEO and co-founder of Thermosphr. What we do at Thermosphr is we develop SaaS solutions to improve the efficiency of heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, specifically addressing large commercial real estate such as shopping centers, hotels, office buildings, etc. So you can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So this is the typical setup in which Thermosphr would intervene. We come into a property which is equipped with an HVAC system, so heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, which is normal circumstances controlled via the BMS, the building management system. And the way Thermosphr is going to deploy its solution is precisely by plugging into this setup, into precisely the network of the building management system via a 4G gateway. And this will enable us to collect in real time data from the whole building space, so including HVAC equipment, sensors, that can be temperature sensors, CO2 sensors, and this data is directly transmitted via our 4G gateway to our cloud solution, which then will create what we call a thermal digital twin of the building. And this digital twin is, so to say, a simulation of the building capable of predicting how the temperature will vary in the different zones of the building, how the equipment is behaving, how much it can produce, how much it will consume in terms of electricity, gas, or whatever energy source you have. And this digital twin is capable of calculating optimized controls and parameters for this equipment, which we basically send also in real time directly to the equipment via the gateway we have installed on site. So it's so to say a SaaS solution, pure software with a little bit of hardware in the middle, but no IoT or no sensors. The result of that is a very significant improvement in energy efficiency, about 30%. It would, of course, vary from building to building, but that's in general the target we have. And altogether, better comfort for the occupants, full automation, which is also nice for the facility management team, and lower CO2 emissions. You can go to the next slide. So I think the best is to illustrate concretely what we do with a case study. So I took here the example of a building where we deployed our solution. So it's a shopping center in France, where which is above 100. You can go back to the previous slide, where we have over 100,000 square meters and 150 shops, so pretty large shopping center. It's an old building built before the 90s, and we have a typical installation of those old buildings with 2 boilers, 2 chillers, 4 cooling towers, and 8 air handling units, for a total consumption of over 4 gigawatt hours per year, and that is a mix of gas and electricity. So you can go to the next slide. The way we deploy Thermosphr in that building, it's been done over 18 days. So the first step would be plugging our gateway in the building. It would also be the day where we have exchange with the facility management team, all the technical team basically involved in this building, collect basic data on the building, such as floor plans, HVAC diagrams, etc. And once we have this connection in place, we will create our model, our digital twin, and this takes about a couple of weeks for us to collect the necessary data in order to train the model and have something that is workable. At the end of the 12th day, we were already ready to commission and test on-site the model, and after 18 days, we were actually taking over control of the HVAC equipment on the site in real time, meaning that we were concretely controlling the temperature inside the building, the boilers when they were on, off, the set points of the water or the air, etc. So replacing on those aspects, so to say, the building management system. You can go to the next slide. The result of this deployment in this very specific case was energy savings of over 21%. That is 890 megawatt hours per year, so something quite substantial. I would say only 164 tons of CO2 per year, because we're in France, and thankfully the electricity doesn't emit so much CO2 because it's mostly nuclear, but we still saved a lot, especially on the gas part. So that's a direct impact on the wallet, let's say, of the property manager, and in that case of the tenants, but also I would say good news for the sustainability and environment officer in this company. For the occupants, the thermal comfort was actually improved. With our control, we managed to have a much more constant temperature inside the building. So by avoiding the peaks, we reduce the energy consumption, but also improve the comfort for the occupants. And the last point for the facility management and technical team on site, I think something very important for operational people is we detected 65 anomalies that we reported immediately to the team, and that would go anywhere from equipment failure to a sensor that is disconnected, all those little things that basically impact the efficiency of the building, and often take 2 weeks or sometimes even 2 months before they are actually reported and even detected. So in our case, it's something that is done usually within the day, and we report directly to the teams those incidents. So yeah, I'm going to stop here since we are time limited. Thank you so much for your time and listening. Of course, you're welcome to asking for questions and going and get more information directly on our website, thermosphr.com, or by reaching out. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nicolas. It was so clear. Does anyone have some questions maybe for all of our speakers? If not, we'll show you the last startup. Yeah, Ingrid.
Hi, Nicolas. Just one quick question. Are you partnering up with companies like ours that does the water consumption monitoring, which you are not doing? And if yes, we could discuss further.
Happy to talk further, Ingrid.
Great. If anyone else has questions, activate your microphones or type down the questions. And maybe, I know we are above time, but we still have one startup. Unfortunately, Nicolo has COVID and cannot present Sensoworks, but we have his presentation. I will show it to you. And again, if you want to know more about the startup, feel free to let us know, and we will make sure to put you in contact with them.
So good evening, everyone. I'm Nicole LeBlanc. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Sensoworks. Thanks to having me today here. And I will start asking you to think about one of those huge fans that you can see in the top right of the image. Those huge fans that are typically installed in the biggest tunnel. And I think I ask you to think if suddenly one of those fans comes off the ceiling and falls on the road. How important will it be to monitor such a situation that has already happened in Italy at least 6 times in the past year? And how successful will be a system able to prevent these events from happening? A sensor can detect an event like this, and the artificial intelligence can send an alarm to the operators. Here is what Sensoworks does, and we are doing it for over a year for bridges, tunnels, sewers, and water systems. Sensoworks acquires data from any kind of devices that implements standard IoT protocols and analyze them thanks to the use of statistical based to machine learning algorithms. For example, it's able to predict when an infrastructure is in need of maintenance or to perform anomaly detection by analyzing the behavior of that infrastructure. And it can intervene automatically by neutralize an alarm situation. We are challengers. We are challengers with great execution skills. Is it true? We were born in infrastructure monitoring, but our platform is data agnostic, which allows us to be extremely flexible and fast in scalability on different markets, and to have a very low time to delivery. The IoT platform you can see in the Magic Quadrant from Gartner are complex to use, inflexible, and with high time to delivery. This because they are born as generic IoT platform. We are positioning the market of industrial IoT platform where it's the total addressable market by 2028 is supposed to be 1.1 trillion. We have a clear strategy that we are already adopting for the go-to-market. Our target for the next year is represented by companies operating in the field of structural monitoring or that manage large civil infrastructures. And thanks to the strategic partnership that we built with system integrators, sensor manufacturers, and engineering companies, we can easily reach our target by offering them an effective tailor-made solution. This strategy has allowed us to work today with Autostrade per l'Italia, ANAS, WeBuild, and Acea. A typical monitoring project lasts between 3 to 5 years. For us, this means ensuring a recurring model. We identify our revenue model based on platform as a service. Platform as a service that it's based on volume. So the number of the volume of the data the platform can manage for that project and the number of devices connected. An average price of the platform is today 35,000 euro per year. We just closed a seed round of $500,000 by the end of the 2021, and our financial plan is driven by increasing company valuation by reaching out an annual recurring revenue of $500,000 for the 2022 and about 4 million in the 2023, when we will prepare for a Series A funding of 5 million euro. So today we are strictly committed to manage the revenue recurring stream. We believe in it. We are a young team with interdisciplinary skills and several years of experience in IT and scientific research. We are supported by advisors with many years of experience in big corporate. We apply to the application because we think that we can build win-win relationships. We apply to promote our innovation in medium-large corporation, and because we think we can act as a key technology enabler in the construction market. But we also, with the help of our shareholders, that are company moving in the construction market, we can bring a solid business tech. I would like to show just a few seconds of what Sensoworks is.
Bridges connect us to people, places, destinations. Tunnels allow us to reach inaccessible places. Buildings are what shapes our homes, our cities. A place where data, technologies, and other services keep us up to date. A smart city with Sensoworks. Sensoworks acts as an enabler for new city services. It connects infrastructures, buildings, bridges, and architectures to IT systems, where data is collected and turned into valuable and readable information. Sensoworks allows you to predict and understand when assets are in need of maintenance and the priority of scheduled interventions. Feel the way Sensoworks makes our city smarter. Sensoworks, sensing the future.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you're still with us, like I said, do not hesitate to let us know if you want to be put in contact with Sensoworks.
Okay. All right. So thank you so much to the guests the guests that had very complete introductions, both JLL Spain and 2150, and thank you to all the startups for their presentations. And our next talk will take place on March 23rd and will be focused on digital construction. The following one will be dedicated to Industry 4.0 and will take place in May. And finally, please take 2 minutes after this session to answer our short survey to help us improve and to put you in touch with any of the featured speakers if you wish to do so. So thank you so much for being here today. And we hope to see you all in March for our 15th edition of Impulse Talks, a digital and low carbon future. Thank you so much.